Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. What if the truth was hidden in a single sentence, whispered by someone who saw everything, just days before the end? Today on Update X24H, we uncover a story that has left millions speechless. The words of Menglong's hairstylist, the last person to see the beloved actor alive, and what he revealed about Duchong's secret plan will change everything you thought you knew. In the quiet moments before the storm, Menglong's final days revealed a side of him few had ever seen. He had always been the kind of person who filled a room with warmth, his laughter light, his spirit gentle, and his kindness genuine. To those who worked with him, he was more than a celebrity. He was a symbol of humility in an industry often clouded by competition and pride. Yet, beneath the surface of that gentle smile, something had begun to shift, subtle at first, but deeply unsettling to anyone who truly knew him. When you visited his trusted hairstylist that final week, the atmosphere was strangely different. The stylist, who had spent years shaping his look for films and public appearances, sensed a quiet heaviness in the air. You sat in front of the mirror, unusually silent. His reflection stared back at him, but there was a distance in his eyes, as if his thoughts had drifted far away from the room, from the chatter, from life itself. The stylist tried to make conversation, mentioning his upcoming projects and events, yet you only smiled faintly, as though those plans now belonged to someone else. His voice was calm, almost tender, when he finally spoke the words that would linger forever. Sometimes people aren't who you think they are. Those few words carried an ache that words rarely do. A mixture of disappointment and quiet realization. It was not the confession of a man in despair, but the reflection of someone who had seen too much, someone who understood that trust could be fragile even among friends. The stylist didn't press further. Something in Yu's tone suggested it wasn't a moment to intrude upon. In retrospect, that day became a portrait of unspoken truth, an image frozen in time, painted with silence, sadness, and grace. The light in the salon shimmered against the mirror, framing his reflection like a farewell no one recognized. He was still Menglong, the man the world adored, but in that hour, he seemed to carry a secret, not of fear but of acceptance. And perhaps that was the most haunting part of all, that behind the serenity of his final smile, there was already a man preparing to walk quietly into history, leaving the world wondering what he had truly seen. That same afternoon, the calm in the salon was quietly shattered. The door opened, and in stepped a man few people there had ever seen before, Duchong. His sudden appearance carried an energy that unsettled the room, a kind of tension that didn't need words to be felt. He wasn't his usual self. The friendly smile that often accompanied him was gone. Instead, there was a sharpness in his movements, a restlessness in his eyes. He didn't greet anyone, didn't even seem aware of the soft hum of conversation that had filled the space moments earlier. His gaze darted from face to face, scanning the room with unease, until he spoke the question that froze the air. "Has you already left?" The stylist recalled that moment vividly, the way the chatter faded, the scissors stopped mid-air, and everyone seemed to hold their breath. Duchong's tone was low, almost impatient, and his eyes flickered with something unreadable, something darker than worry. He stood there for a few seconds, his fingers tapping against his coat as if trying to contain whatever storm brewed inside him. When told that Yu was still in the back, his face tightened for just a moment. Then he turned away, muttering words under his breath that no one could quite catch. It was only later, when everything had already fallen apart, that those words began to haunt them all. At that time no one paid much attention. People come and go, friends visit without reason. But the stylist remembered the way Yu's posture subtly stiffened when he heard Du's voice from the front. He didn't turn around. He didn't speak. He just paused. A single heavy silence that seemed to say more than any words could. It was as though he knew something the others didn't, something that made him retreat inward, behind that calm mask he wore so well. When Du finally left, the atmosphere never returned to what it was. The air felt heavier, the laughter more forced. And in that silence, the stylist felt an unspoken fear ripple through the room, one that made no sense at the time but grew louder in the days to come. Looking back, it was as if the shadow that entered the salon that day didn't leave with Duchong. It lingered, quietly wrapping itself around Menglong's final moments, waiting for history to understand its meaning. Not long after Duchong's unexpected visit, the silence in the salon began to shift again. Menglong's phone started ringing, once, then again and again, each time from an unfamiliar number. The sound was soft yet jarring, cutting through the still air like a quiet alarm. Each call seemed to pull him further away from the moment, as if every vibration carried a weight invisible to everyone else. He would glance at the screen, hesitate for a brief second, then excuse himself politely and step outside. Through the glass, the stylist could see him pacing slowly, his head slightly bowed, his expression unreadable. It wasn't anger or fear. It was something far more fragile. The look of a man trying to hold his composure while his world began to crumble in silence. When you returned after the first call, he tried to smile, but it was thin and fleeting, a gesture more for others than for himself. His hands, usually steady and sure, trembled faintly as he adjusted his sleeves. The stylist noticed the change but didn't ask. After years of working together, she had learned to recognize when silence said more than any question ever could. The second call came minutes later. Again Yu excused himself, and again, he returned a little dimmer, his presence slightly faded, like a light flickering in a storm. By the third call, even the staff began to exchange quiet glances. Something was clearly wrong. Yet Yu continued to wear that polite, careful calm that had defined him for so long. There was an unmistakable distance in his eyes now, as if each conversation on the other end of the line had carved a little more from his spirit. The stylist would later recall that moment vividly. He wasn't himself. It was as though he was carrying a secret too heavy to speak aloud. When the final call ended, Yu sat in silence for a long while, his gaze locked on his reflection. He exhaled deeply, a sound that trembled between exhaustion and resolve. Perhaps he already knew that whatever awaited him beyond that salon was inevitable. In that quiet room, surrounded by the hum of hairdryers and the scent of shampoo, Menglong seemed to vanish inward, his heart somewhere far away, lost in the echoes of those silent messages that no one else would ever hear. After the heartbreaking news of his passing, the stylist couldn't stop replaying that final day. The way Yu smiled faintly, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he seemed prepared. "At the time we didn't understand," he said. "But now I know." He was carrying something too heavy for one person. He was never the type to share personal struggles, but his silence spoke louder than words. And in that silence, there may have been a truth he hoped the world would one day uncover. What makes this story powerful isn't just the suspicion. It's the humanity behind it. It reminds us that even the brightest souls can hide their pain, that kindness doesn't mean safety, and that truth often whispers before it shouts. Across the world, fans continue to honor Menglong, lighting candles, sharing his films, and remembering him not for how he died, but for how deeply he lived. His story now stands as a symbol. The truth may be buried for a time, but it always finds its way to the light. Thank you for watching this heartfelt story on Update X24H. If Menglong's story touched your heart today, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another update. Your support keeps us uncovering the stories that truly matter. Stories of courage, truth, and humanity. This is Update X24H, where every story finds its voice.